The business of blockchain is getting huge. We're starting to see implications on the political front, what it might mean around the world. And of course, a lot of what's happening in the markets itself are also affected. Today, we'll break it all down for you. It's going to be a good one. We've got a special guest that you don't want to miss. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. Let's get started on this. I want to do first kind of just to give you guys kind of an outline of what's really happening in the space right now. This came out from CNBC. These were digital asset award companies. And you'll notice here, I mean, we've got quite a few of the American-based companies. BitGo, who's going to be on with us here in a second, Chainalysis, CoinTracker, Coinbase, Consensus, Crypto.com, Singapore. Point is we've got a lot of major initiatives around companies that are starting to make real moves going forward. So much so that we've seen activity in DC. Capitol Hill, of course, had a whole slew of things happening yesterday, along with the Roundtable. We'll get a chance to talk a little bit about that. The Roundtable had a pretty interesting group. This was a group that was advising the White House. You've got Mark Cuban. We're going to have Mike Belshe on from BitGo. But you've got Garlinghouse, Novogratz, quite a few that were asked to come over to advise the White House on potentially where crypto is going. So on that note, I want to bring in Mike Belshe of BitGo to bring him into the show. How are you, Mike?
I'm good. How are you, Paul?
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for coming in today. So obviously big news in the sense of DC paying attention, especially this administration, seeming to pay attention a little bit more to what's happening in crypto. I want to kind of get your opinion on the roundtable yesterday that occurred. I know that you've been in touch with, Ro Khanna, one of the organizers of this event. What has been the feedback that you've been able to kind of garner from what's happened yesterday?
Sure. Well, look, I've known Ro for a while. He's our representative out here in Silicon Valley. And just for the record, I ended up not going. I canceled a couple of days before. So the report that I was there is inaccurate, but it seemed like they were pretty well represented by crypto, which is part of why I didn't go. Look, there's been a lot of focus on this SAB 121 for the last couple of months. And in general, SAB 121 shouldn't exist. We all know that it shouldn't exist. For your viewers that aren't familiar with it, the SEC came along earlier this year and said, hey, if you're a public company and you are holding crypto assets on behalf of your clients, you need to put it on your balance sheet. And this is a weird thing to do. You don't usually put your client's money on your balance sheet.
Right.
This has a bunch of side effects. The most notable one is that it makes it very difficult for the major custodians of the United States. And I'm talking about Bank of New York Mellon. I'm talking about JP Morgan. I'm talking about State Street. None of these guys are going to put crypto assets on their balance sheet because it creates a problem with them in terms of how they do other accounting in terms of safety and soundness. All right. So the word on the street is roughly that SAB 121 prevents the major custodians from entering into crypto. And of course, we want the major custodians entering into crypto. If you want to de-risk crypto, what's the best way to do it? Take the guys that know how to manage risk and bring them into the industry. All right, so that's kind of where things started. As soon as it went through the House, Biden pre-announced that he would veto it, even if it gets passed by the Senate. And it passed the Senate, and sure enough, then Biden vetoed it. So that's an interesting stance. And one thing that most people don't know is that the GAO has already ruled that SAB 121 is major rulemaking, which is subject to this rule called the CRA, the Congressional Review Act. And Gary Gensler and the SEC did not follow the process and procedure. They did not go to Congress and give them an opportunity to approve it. So it's illegal by definition. And yet somehow the current administration has kind of just said, yeah, okay, so the GAO rejected it. We're still going to let the SEC do it. It's regulators run amok. And there's no other way to describe it. Anyway, that's kind of what's led to all of this. And then Ro led a roundtable just this week going to DC to try to educate some of the folks on the White House staff about what is crypto about, what does this SAB 121 do, and what we should do about it. By the way, interesting, Ro initially voted no on the SAB 121 repeal, which was generally reviewed negatively by crypto aficionados like myself. But he just, on the revote that they just had, which this morning, he voted yes. So he changed his mind.
Yeah, so here's the list right here on the and I want to show a clip for this in general, but you had Moscow. This is our Florida flipped, which was not good. But you had Dean Phillips. I was surprised. He flipped, Cheryl flipped, and VZ flipped. But you had Jackson, Rokana, and then Sozi and Thander all came over. So that was 4, I guess, almost a little bit more of a positive if you were really looking at some of the details here around the fact that this did not go through, but at the same time, there was some Democrats as well as cross-party aisles that were able to come in. I want to play a clip for you to kind of outline a little bit about what happened, because this was interesting right here. Let's go to the clip.
Mr. Speaker, a message from the President of the United States.
I am directed by the President of the United States to deliver to the House of Representatives a message in writing.
Some deal that's being made. I have no details of it, and I was just wondering if Mr. Speaker, if I could inquire of the ranking member if there's paper on this or any published accounts of what the ranking member said.
What did he say?
He's asking you about comments that were made about whether the SAB 121 has been worked out between the SEC.
I'm happy to yield to the ranking member. I'm interested that this deal that you've talked about, that certain banks can custody digital assets, and there's a deal made with the Securities Exchange Commission. I was wondering if there's any published account of this or anything in writing we have from the SEC.
As I said when I made the presentation, that they're close to working out the deal with SAB and the custody banks.
Look, let's reject this idea that we just wait for a couple people to strike some private deal for a group of banks.
That's amateur hour. That's trying to avoid the embarrassment of having the House of Representatives vote like it did on FIT 21, where better than 2/3 majority were in support of this very policy.
And my colleagues, after 21 voted to repeal this stupid accounting, I'm sorry. So I would say those 50 Democrats, look at this anew. You want to send the message to your voters that you're pro-crypto. Those 50 that voted for the market structure but didn't vote for this should vote with us.
President Biden actually interrupted that vote with a message. And then, of course, clearly there's something going on in the back room between the SEC and some of these banks. So what do you make of this, Mike? What's your opinion about what's happening right there?
I mean, look, this is all a sideshow and it's all theater.
Yeah.
Honestly, it doesn't matter. So one of the things they're referencing there is this little oddity that this other bill called the FIT 21 bill, which would introduce some market structure for crypto. It also happens to obliterate SAB 121. So
Right.
it would be a second way to do it. And some of the Congress people voted yes on one and on the other. Okay. But here's the real thing that matters. And I'm kind of surprised that SAB 121 gets so much attention. There's 3 regulators that matter when it comes to crypto custody and banking. Of course, the SEC is the one that people think of the most. That has to do with
Sure.
whether these things are securities, et cetera. They have put Gary Gensler in front and center. He's the lightning rod for all attention related to crypto matters.
Right.
But there's 2 others that matter at least as much, if not more. So one is the OCC. That's the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. All of the major custodial banks are regulated by the OCC. And the OCC, under the director, Michael Hsu, has Comptroller of the Currency. He has made it very clear that anyone touching crypto is not meeting his safety and soundness guidelines. Now, there's nothing written, but we had the previous Comptroller of the Currency under the previous administration, which was allowing crypto to be held by OCC chartered banks. And then all of a sudden, without a single law changing, without a single regulatory word being rewritten, all of a sudden the new administration has taken a completely opposite view. I mean, this is very difficult to run a business, right? Like if nothing written changed, if the lawmakers changed nothing, and yet the regulators can just take a 180, like who's in charge here? So I think Congress
Right.
should be pissed. Congress was not consulted on this stuff, and yet somehow it happened. All right, the third regulator that matters is the FDIC. So of course, OCC and FDIC are both federal regulators. OCC regulates federally chartered custodial banks. But state banks are not covered by that. So state banks are still
Right.
open to work with crypto companies. And in fact, many of them do. However, now enter in the FDIC. Pretty much every bank in America is subject to the mercy of the FDIC. And the FDIC has also made it very clear that if you touch crypto, we are going to scrutinize you and we are going to look at all kinds of information that otherwise we won't. And they announced this via letter, I don't know, April 2022, I think is the date.
Yep.
All right, so all three of these guys matter. So even if you nuke SAB 121, which is getting all of the focus and the attention, which is basically this silly, tiny little accounting rule that the SEC never should have been allowed to put in play, it's not going to change the OCC or the FDIC.
Will FIT 21 actually address this?
I think actually Congress doesn't matter right now. So I don't believe crypto is a partisan issue. I don't think it's a Republican or a Democrat thing. Some people are thinking that the Democrats hate crypto, but that's not really the case. There's a few spot people in the Democratic Party that don't understand crypto. They tend to be over the age of 80, and they're very negative on it. Okay. One of them is the President of the United States. The President of the United States puts in all of the lead regulators: Gary Gensler, Michael Hsu, Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, and also FDIC, right? So basically what we're at is a world where the only guy that matters is Joe Biden. And even if Congress manages to get a bill to nuke SAB 121 through both the House and the Senate, Biden will veto it anyway, right?
Yeah.
So it turns out there's only one guy that matters. I know that there's a lot of talk about who's the dictator, but when it comes to crypto, right now Joe Biden is the linchpin. So
all right. So with that being said, I got to play this next clip for you. I think it'll add on to your sentiment here. Let's go to that clip.
All right.
People are talking about Biden is too old. Hell, I'm older than Biden. It ain't gonna be no other Democratic candidate. It's gonna be Biden, and we better know it.
They've seen President Biden. They've lived through his presidency. They've also seen former President Trump. They've lived through his presidency. They've heard these arguments about democracy, about the fate of the election, and yet Trump is not only winning, but winning increasingly by a larger margin. So what is the plan among Democrats to change that trajectory? It sounds like you're talking about saying and doing all the same things, but do you believe that something needs to change?
I think we need to keep working.
Sometimes I just wonder. I don't. It's too good. It's better than real life. I feel like, Mike.
You got to put that one back to back with Maxine Waters when she's blowing a kiss to SBF.
Oh,
the guy
there
that
you go.
off the FTX fraud.
That would have been a good one.
So I don't know.
That would have been a good one. Well, I think the point is do you think Biden is going to get the nomination? Well, he's got the nomination. Do you think he's going to be on the ballot, I should say, come November?
I guess I mostly think that they will swap him out, but to be honest, I don't have a lot of conviction around it. Part of the reason I didn't end up going to this meeting is because, look, I would love to help the White House. I would love to help Biden have a better understanding of crypto, the advantages it brings to the financial system, and what we're trying to do. There's a bunch of stand-up people that were in that room that are trying to build a better financial system for Americans.
Right.
And the opportunity to help him would be great. But because of where he's at, I'm not sure who's the president today, and I'm not sure who's really calling the shots behind the scenes. So who do you even go meet with at the White House to have an impact? And I think that's an important thing for people to think about as they think about who should be the next candidate to run.
Yeah, I think, this is something that I was concerned with even when we heard that, this roundtable would take place. Because it sounds to me, based on most of the tweets and things coming out, Anita Dunn, who is basically, the president's right hand in terms of administrative. But one of the notes there at the end was Cuban saying that Biden should fire Gary Gensler. So that kind of clarifies that he wasn't in the room. Do you think the SEC has lost enough? And could it be still a position of the Democratic Party to maybe, hand Mr. Gensler his walking papers before a November election to try to win over some of the crypto crowd?
If you just ask the simple question of, well, what happens if Paxos decided to go public or if Ripple decided to go public, and they walk into the SEC with an S1 are they going to get a fair treatment from the SEC? The regulator's job is not to decide, I like you, I don't like you. Their job is to say, okay, here's your S1, you want to go public, have you done A, B, C, D, and make sure that the checklist is met. And if it's met, you let them go public.
Yeah.
But I don't think anyone believes that under Gary Gensler's watch that he would give these companies a fair shake.
Exactly.
So that's the problem. We need regulators that are regulators instead of agents of politicians.
So a couple of things happening globally. We've got MiCA going on in the EU. You've got Japan, Hong Kong, and you look at how far it appears to be that the U.S. is behind on almost every front, both in Asia and in the EU. Do you think that that is breaking through to any of the regulators or the politicians like Ro Khanna? Do they really understand what's at risk right here?
I think they are aware, and they're getting more aware, but I think also they're acting politically. Now, remember, BitGo, we are a licensed custodian here in the United States under DFS, under South Dakota as well. But we're also licensed in Germany under BaFin. We are 100% MiCA ready today. If you're not familiar, the German BaFin regulator it's kind of like the New York DFS of the EU. Yep. We're also regulated out of Dubai and out of Singapore. So we have a lot of experience with these regulators, not just in America, but abroad. And the approach to crypto is completely different in America versus elsewhere. Elsewhere wants to attract business to run it properly. They know that it's changing super rapidly, and they recognize that that's okay, right? Like, all right, this thing is innovative and it's changing, but it's better to bring it into your jurisdiction where you can start to look at it, understand it, and build better. Now, in the case of Tokyo and Japan in particular, remember, that's where we just had 10 years ago, Mt. Gox was kind of the first crypto company that really blew up in a bad way. And frankly, any amount of trivial oversight probably could have caught the failure of Mt. Gox, much, much earlier than it did and saved millions of dollars of losses. But the Tokyo regulators, the FSC there, they long recognized that they needed to make some changes. They put in a crypto license long ago, and they require cold storage of all of the crypto licensees, and they require a significant amount of it go back to cold on a nightly basis for a very specific reason. So they've been on top of crypto. By the way, I think about a quarter of them are using BitGo technology for the cold storage in Japan right now. Anyway, Japan's got a long history. It's helped them kind of navigate things. They're a very proud country, and they're much more advanced than America is today in terms of regulatory of crypto.
Well, they may be getting ready to really separate themselves. I want to play a clip for you, especially around what the Japanese are doing. Let's take a look.
Nikkei outperforming the S&P since then, up over 50%. The S&P up just about 36% since then. A lot of money is going into Japan since then.
But perhaps it has more legs to go. In our view, in Japan, there is a plethora of investment opportunities where the return on equity has been low for a very long time. That is all changing, and it is changing for the first time in more than 30 years. And that's why we think that this paradigm shift makes it for such an interesting opportunity to invest in this space. And I can assure you, a lot of global investors also find this part of the market very, very interesting.
The interesting thing is the Japanese government made Web3 as a national strategy. After making the Web3 as a national strategy, they have already changed some of the regulation. So cryptocurrency is cryptocurrency in Japan. It's not security. All VCs, all people can invest in cryptocurrency.
内閣総理大臣の岸田文雄です。一昨年にスタートアップ育成5カ年計画を策定し、今その成果が着実に生まれつつあります。世界も日本に注目しています。
And we are going to deploy public blockchain together with Sony in coming months. But once we launch the chain, I think this is going to be one of the biggest projects in the world, I believe. Yeah.
Could Tokyo become the next Silicon Valley, here of what we could see on, real innovation going forward? What are your thoughts?
Well, look, Japan has been a big market for crypto for 10 years. So it's been in the top 3, 4 kind of the whole way through. I think probably the challenges for Japan involve a little bit more opening up on maybe the banking side, making it so that non-Japanese can participate more easily. It's a difficult market to navigate. And they're competing against, Singapore and Dubai, who are also very much trying to open up and having pretty good inroads, frankly. The U.S. politicians often worried from protecting the United States. But what's going to happen is one of two things. Either we figure out how to put sensible regulation in play here, and then today's most solid markets, which are the US markets, can start to adopt crypto in various ways, and the world's money comes into the United States.
Right.
If you don't, the US's money goes out of the United States.
Yep, sure.
So whether it ends up being Japan that wins, or Singapore or Dubai, or heck, maybe even somewhere in Europe, although I guess they're kind of the underdog right now. We'll see, but I think there's going to be a lot of choices, and we may see isolationists as a reaction to that, which would be just unfortunate for Americans. Americans would just lose all around.
Hey, Mike, it's been always a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming in today. We appreciate it.
Well, I do want to be optimistic, and I want to say, I think the U.S. will figure it out.
We're going to
win. We have the best markets here, and there's a few people in Congress, and Biden obviously doesn't like crypto, but it's not a systemic problem. So it's going to get fixed, and it's going to be all right.
Just a matter
I think
of time.
America's still the best markets. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Anyway, thanks for coming on the show today. Appreciate it. Okay. All right, so you guys, if you're not, first of all, if you're not tuned into this channel in terms of a subscriber and you haven't liked a couple of videos, do that right now, because that's going to get us in your algorithm for YouTube, and you're going to get a chance to catch us when we go live, as well as breaking a lot of the stories that come out of DC around a lot of innovation in blockchain, Web3 gaming, etc. We do all of that right here on PBN, so make sure and just subscribe, like a couple of videos. It really helps us out, and it helps us understand what we need to do for you. Also, if you're not following me on X, just do that. It's @PaulBaron. We'll see you next time right here on TechPath.